Good morning, everyone. I want to thank the IEEE-USA and particularly Nicole. I think I put her through the ringer in preparing for this. You know, when she first asked me to speak here, I said, sure, I can do that. You know, I've got 40 years worth of slides. Well, they were actually called view graphs, and at TI we called them foils, of all things. Whoever heard of that? Of course, we also called silicon wafers slices, so that's another problem that TI has, their own jargon. I said, sure, I can do that. Well, I guess I'm a slow learner. And actually, I am somewhat of a slow learner. It's interesting, but I can't go into that today. I don't think that will be helpful. It began to dawn on me after a few months, what have I gotten myself into? This is not about me coming here and teaching technology and showing how great I am, but rather it's about you, all right? What I can share that might be helpful as literally an independent contributor, never managed anybody, hardly managed myself in my career. And really what I've achieved is due to a lot of hard work, yes, but I've always attributed more to luck, to what I call serendipity, luck, and timing. And I hope today to prove that that's the case, that you have to go for the long haul and then have a lot of serendipity, luck, and timing. Also, the only way that I could have achieved anything is really through the blessings of American freedom and entrepreneurship and innovation. And I think I can show you how that worked out also along the way. So let's begin. And I'm going to click and wait. Yes, there is a delay. Now let me first of all say that we're talking about leadership, but also I am doing an adaptable thing today. I have tremendous glare in my eyes from recent eye problems. I'm not operating with a laptop where I can go from slide to slide and navigate. I've jettisoned all of those things, and they're over there. I was going to have a laptop up here, so this is adaptability. And I think that I have been adaptable in a certain way to the dictates of reality and to Mother Nature, but I haven't been very adaptable to management my entire career. I've probably got a line of managers that would agree with me on that. Okay? So there's a disclaimer here. Okay? I'm just sharing stuff with you. What you do with it is up to you. Okay. So I've already defined who I am, Hornbeck. Digital micromirrors we're going to see are really, really strange creatures. Why are they disruptive? Well, they're disruptive in a number of ways. But the most important one, from my perspective, the thing that I take real pride in, is that after 115 years of film and film projection, that we have converted the entire industry to digital releases and digital distribution and to digital projection. And that's basically the reason that I got the Oscar. It wasn't for doing all of that or building projectors. Heavens knows, hundreds of millions of dollars went into all of that. But it's for developing the digital micromirror device to the point that it was commercially viable. And that's the success that I feel is in being honored by the Academy. So it's disruptive in that business, but there are many others that we could talk about. That's the most visible one. Now, this thing about fearless trailblazing is sort of a recent invention in my mind, really, because when I was doing all of this, I didn't think about it being fearless. And so, as you're going to see, you may think there's something wrong with me. Why wouldn't he have been? I always viewed it as being pragmatic, making good choices, in spite of the consequences. And there were some bad ones. So let's move on and see where we can go from here. I think what I want to do is this is the agenda. How does a chip work? You got to know something about it. I'm going to take you on a very quick tour of the origins and then also what happened over time, because in the fourth segment of this, we're going to do 9 episodes of real-life experiences. There's going to be one PowerPoint slide per experience, okay? Just one. You'll have to limit me to 1 minute for each one. You gotta do that. Cool, thank you. And then we're gonna have a sort of my thoughts, your thoughts on what do those 9 episodes mean. And that's going to be very brief. I'm going to throw up, in fact, last night, I always do things the last minute. I threw up a whole bunch of ideas there and thoughts. And then I think we need to open up for a group discussion. Understand Nicole's you're gonna, yeah. Okay, good. And we'll do a recap at the end, and let's go. Okay. So, here's how the chip works. Okay, it's in a hermetic package. We're popping up 2 micromirrors. We're going to turn them on. You can see there's a CMOS memory circuit underneath. 1s and 0s come in. Some mirrors. They're stopped by some rotation stops called spring tips, and there you go. All they do is flip on and off. They're really, really stupid little creatures. They're on, they're off. They're a little bit like me. Okay, they really are. I am absolutely been described as a digital person without an off switch, and I'll talk to you later a bit about the off switch part, but that's a very simple concept. That concept will get you absolutely nothing in the way of displays. You can do that 10,000 times a second, but without the most clever algorithms in the world, which were developed uniquely at Texas Instruments, you would not see this in the theaters today. There's 24 million of these showing movies today in over 160,000 theaters. Okay, so turn on the lights and action, and they project light into or out of the projection lens at around 10,000 times a second. So you can select any interval of time to have the mirror on or off, and you can guess how you get color. Okay. Now, I want to take you back to 1987, and we're going to see how we got there. It's really a strange story. But when an integrated circuit comes to life for the first time in the sense of movement, okay? Okay. 512 digital micromirrors, 1987, Central Research Labs. That's the building there with 3 levels in Dallas, Texas. Under a microscope, dark field illumination, and we generated some images, and that's the original device, which, by the way, I just discovered yesterday. That device, 4677-4-23, was put into the IEEE Spectrum, or anyway, Hall of Fame, Chip Hall of Fame, next to one of the Intel processor chips. I don't know what those are all about. How important could they possibly be compared to digital micromirrors, which are totally unique in all the world? Okay, so, and with 80 cents worth of red and blue cellophane, and there's the receipt, 86 cents worth. I put that in and I generated color images even, and so now if I'll just keep my mouth shut and advance the slide, come on, slide. Okay, there's one. Okay, another click, come on. Oh, we can do this. Why is it so slow? It stopped advancing. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, no. No. Okay. I'm going to go back, and I'm not going to, apparently it's just very, very, very slow. Okay. This is only 49 seconds. I don't know why. Okay. There we go. Yay! All right. See we're going to go out. That's a 1 mil gold wire coming down in a ball bond. That proves to you it's an integrated circuit, okay? And we're going to go down to the central area where and there they are, digital micromirrors, March the 7th, 1988.
And there they are in black and white, and I'm only going to wait just a little bit. Now I'm proving to you that you can turn them off. That's good. And, oh, there's color. And now I'm going to click out of this because we don't have a lot of time. Okay, one more click. Thank you, thank you. Well, I'd be much faster with my laptop. Thank you. Okay, historical tour is trailblazer-centric. Okay, just remember, TI invested more than $800 million, that's money lost, okay, to get to the point where this is highly profitable and where we have a huge business, okay? So I'm ignoring all of that, and this is my version of where the technology came from. Okay, there are periods of time, prehistoric times, I'm going to go through those, there's a reason. Analog dark ages, I tried to do analog micromirrors. Digital enlightenment, wow, that's unique. The venture period, where you see the red, that's dollars being lost. 236 million in 1 year, okay? And then productization and things turn green. And opportunities open up and lots of innovative products. Okay, so we're going to do the prehistoric time. And there I am as a machine shop. I was actually a staff machine shop foreman in grad school, guys. I'm a very practical person. Physicist, well, it couldn't be too practical. Any physicists out there? Huh? Oh, you don't count. You made that decision too long ago. Okay, well, you've all made a wise choice, because the only thing I can say about physics is, boy, can you retrain yourself in a hurry. And so it was a real strength for me, constant learning, okay. And so I'm going to tell you the story of this, but anyway, I actually demonstrated the first and only ever three-dimensional CCD with two overlying charge storage channels where you could store two separate images on top of one another and then clock them out and separate them. Okay, so we enter the analog dark ages. That's a period of 10 years. And during that time, we had a government contract to do metallized membrane light modulators, where you place a membrane down on the chip. And there you see some images, and you'll see there's a lot of defects. And I took that idea then into cantilever micromirrors that are just hinged on one corner, okay? And tried to do printing. And you see the print samples are very non-uniform. There down the right-hand side. And right there under the 1984 is a 2400 by 1 array of micromirrors. Well, by 86, it was apparent that we couldn't solve the problems with analog micromirrors. And so came the big year, and I'll talk about people wanting to leave the company and do other things, and you know, I didn't want to be really associated with this too much. That was 1987. But lo and behold, we did have a printer product, and it was a travel information printer, ticket printer, okay? Very crude. It's the first product. And there you see 4677, you see the patent, the fundamental patent, many others along the way. Something very strange happened. We're going to talk about this in detail. There was a confluence of events that occurred in the summer of 1991 that inspired the board of directors and several particular people within the corporate structure. They wanted to turn this thing on and do high definition television. Wow, hundreds of millions of dollars, okay? From my perspective again, irrational. I was terrified. But I'll tell you what I did in response to that. I had to respond. Okay, and then we go into this period of commercialization, and let's just look at a few of the things that we did. And to talk about it, I really have to say that our business at Texas Instruments is to sell chipsets and what we call solutions. They're algorithms and chipsets, reference designs. Some of these designs you can buy as kits. to test out your new concepts, okay? And I hope that you'll consider that if you have any kind of image sensing or projection application in mind. And so that's the way the system works, and as I said, the brains of the whole thing is in the algorithms. Okay, so then it's the parallel development of everything, hundreds of millions of dollars, starting from scratch in the wafer fab and the packaging and the systems and algorithms, bringing together a lot of people. During that time, we went from the so-called B2 pixel, I'll tell you a funny story about that, to the hidden hinge, which is down in the lower right-hand corner, and introduced the first projectors in 1996, a big clunky 27 pounds. From there, very quickly, we moved out, and it was such a unique technology. I actually got an Emmy for it in 1998. In 1999, we had the first digital exhibition of a major motion picture. So this is really the birth of digital cinema. There's my wife, Laura. And we're standing in front of the AMC Burbank 14 Theater. And there we have Welcome to the Future of Cinema. And I really, really believed it at that time. And in fact, I wrote a 43-page paper that's available that concludes with the fact that this technology is really the projection technology that will prevail in the 21st century. I'm glad I said that. I doubted when I wrote it. Okay, so we went from clunky 27 pounds down to 3 pounds, we did tabletop TVs. We had a huge business until flat panel wiped us out. And we went to sub 1 pound. And I'm not going to go much further than that because I want to do really where we are today, just a real recap of, come on. Okay, so how many of you are doing 3D printing? Anyone? Okay. Are you using DLP or are you using something else? Huh? What? Okay. Anyway, we're into 3D printing in a pretty big way. We're into automotive, we're into sensing applications, and lithography. And of course, I put digital cinema at the top, and that's sort of the largest projection technology we have. So these industrial applications of automotive are relatively new. We're going like gangbusters in those areas, opening up new markets. Okay. Now, this is to set up the next thing. We're going to do sort of 77 to 2015 very quickly. 77, we're doing membrane light modulators, okay? 87, we have an invention, okay? We ship our first products in 1996, and digital premiere 1999, then some movies that were shown as sort of milestones, and come on. Okay. Something very wonderful happened. 2010, the Digital Cinema Initiative. Studios got together, set the standards. We were already going pretty good, and so most of the standards favored us. James Cameron, he sent me an email of congratulations when I won an Oscar. He did some pioneering work. 4K chip, which is the chip that we have there today out there in the theaters, and 100,000 theaters by 2014. That was sort of the threshold for getting the Oscar. We have, I believe, 8.5 or so out of 10 theaters in the world are DLP cinema. You know what? I'm going to be adaptable. I'm going to start clicking this thing ahead of time. Maybe twice. Now, you see, I did it twice, and it skipped over the birth of cinema anyway. This is my favorite topic, and then we're going to move on. Okay, so this is the Burbank 14 Theater, June the 18th, 1999. This is like being at the Lumiere Brothers film exhibition, December the 28th, 1895, in Paris, France, in the basement of a cafe. Well, this is the equivalent of that. We weren't in a basement, okay? And I didn't do what I just said I was going to do. There's my wife, Laura, and I standing outside the theater. And Here's the headline, Digital Menace Not Far, Far Away. Digital Menace. And there you have, what, film on the right and digital micromirrors on the left. You can see the prototype projectors that we had out there at the time. There was no commercialization. And Rick McCallum correctly perceived this as a turning point in film exhibition. I have a wonderful story I could tell you about the press conference the day before and the split screen viewing where we had a shootout against film, but I don't really have time. But I had an experience where I thought my career was at an end. We can talk about that later. Because I anticipated a very bad press from Rick McCallum. There's the 4K chip and 16,000 times more mirrors than the early invention. Okay, I got to show you this. I got to show you this. And go out to the internet and you can see the whole thing. But my family was there, and you can see at the very beginning, I walked over to my family. No one else did. They went right up the stage to get their awards. This was the only Oscar. This is the Scientific and Technical Awards. Let me just say there's usually less than one Oscar per year over the course of time. So there hadn't been any a couple years, and there wasn't any the next year, okay? And so it's a big deal there. Most of the others are other awards, plaques, and so on. And so I thought, why are they not going over to their families first? Are they that eager? So you'll see that I did that. I knew the cameras would have to follow. And there I'm getting the award in here. And then I lift it up, and it's 8 pounds, and I had bursitis at the time. And they didn't tell me it was solid cast. They didn't tell me that, because the Emmy is hollow. I just, whoa, and I didn't grimace. I was watching my face, and I didn't let on that hurt. I was so proud of myself, okay. Okay. Anyway, I rambled on for 6 minutes, and you can listen to the speech where I credited my father in a very particular way. Okay, now, we're going to do 9 episodes. These are going to seem strange. You may not be able to relate to them, but maybe the first one. Now, when we get done, we're going to do some thoughts on what goes into a fearless trailblazer. That's sort of on the left there. I've left that blank. I was going to fill it in for you, and I thought, no, I'll let you fill it in. Okay. On the right is sort of the path to an award, big deal, because I do a reset immediately. In fact, I had already discounted the Oscar months before, once it was announced, because I hadn't done anything worthwhile in the last 6 months, which is the way that I would gauge myself. So that's the accomplishment, but look at what's in the middle. Intangible, serendipity, luck, and timing. Okay. Focus and duration. Dedication, perseverance, the freedom to explore, and good heavens, we've got it in this country. And so that's the bridge, okay? And so here's the strangest thing, you may be able to relate to it. So I'm in Case Western Reserve University. I'm ready to graduate in 1973, and I had been employed during the summer. You see those dotted lines in the summer of 64, well, I should say 65 on the right, at NASA, Lewis Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm gonna go to NASA and get a job. There's a recession. I should have shown the graph of the recession. But guess what? You see the plot of NASA expenditures? Where's the peak? 64, 65. You see that? It's not a log scale, it's linear. You see where it plummets and down there at the bottom? That's when I try to get a job, and they're laying people off, you know. I don't have any connections whatsoever. That connection's gone. So I get an invitation to go out to Lawrence Livermore Labs, and they wanted me to, after they discovered I don't know anything about computers at all, they thought maybe I could rig explosives out in the desert. Conventional underground, shock testing. They don't always use nuclear for that. and it's much cheaper. And the expendable physicist goes out there and, So I left there really, really upset by that, okay? Now remember, there's a recession. So I got another connection. Case Western University postdoc. He had left a year earlier and found a job in the Central Research Labs of Texas Instruments doing bubble memories. Has anybody ever heard of bubble memories? The old physicists and the old engineers. Okay, bubble memories and CCDs were a hot topic everywhere. This is what I call simultaneous invention. Everybody's got a piece of it. Nobody had a piece of digital micromirrors. Everybody had a piece of CCD, and not just for imaging, and magnetic bubble memories. And there were actually some products that went out, okay, before they were disruptively replaced by you-know-what. Okay. I went there for an interview. I convinced them that I knew little about physics, but a whole lot about machine shop and handball, okay? But I must be amazingly adaptable because I built all these widgets and gadgets and did a really tough bit of PhD research, not at all relevant. It was on metals, not all relevant to TI. And guess what happened? I got rejected. What? So about 2 weeks later, and now I'm thinking, well, I'm going to be driving a cab. I'm going to be doing something to earn a living. And I get another call. I get an offer to go into the CCD imaging technology, sight unseen. What had happened was that the Central Research Lab director, in doing an exit interview with me, was convinced that, yeah, he doesn't know much. He was a theoretical physicist. Yeah, he doesn't know much, but he's somebody we ought to hire, and so they did. Problem is, 8 months later, he left, become a professor, head of a department, and he was replaced by another theoretical physicist who correctly discerned that I didn't know a whole lot about physics and a whole lot about machine shop and handball. And there the problems began. And I'm in the Central Research Labs. Okay. I'm showing these other two block paths for a reason, because we're going to see I am literally on. I was blocked from the CCD memory group and the signal processing group by what, serendipity, luck, and timing, or something that I did, I don't know. That is literally, I'm going to convince you, that's the only path that leads to digital micromirrors. Nothing else leads to digital micromirrors. We would not have those today if I hadn't been blocked at every turn. Okay, so now I'm in the Central Research Labs. Okay, so November 73. CCD memory and signal processing groups are there. Why do I continue to show them? Because now there are opportunities. It turns out that the CCD memory and signal processing group had the upper echelons of universities, the tier ones. You know, the Stanfords, the Berkeleys, the MITs, the Caltechs, all of those. And then there was a CCD imaging group, and we were sort of the second and third level down. Case Western, I think, was second tier sort of school at the time. May still be. They were on the top level, we were on the first level. What did I do? I used them as opportunities. I went up to them, we didn't have Google, and got a lot of information, humbled myself, and came down to the first level like Moses with the tablets. And they thought it was brilliant. But that's what I did in graduate school. Any way that I could get the knowledge, the practical kinds of knowledge that I needed, okay? And so I was put into CCD characterization. I learned a lot of things on my own. I was given the opportunity to do a backside illuminated thin silicon wafer CCD for moving target indication applications. And what did I do? I rejected the approach that had been proposed. And I don't have time to convince you, but if I hadn't, we wouldn't have been on the path to the Oscar. Instead, I developed a very novel architecture and actually demonstrated the principle, and you saw some data later. So now we're going on from that point. And what happened was because of our expertise in rear illumination, we were able to get a contract, and now we're really, really getting close to light modulation to develop this stratified channel CCD concept with its backside addressing that I rejected went to a front side NMOS addressing of a spatial light modulator, which was a membrane. We did a demonstration of that in 1979 and another demonstration in 1981 of a larger device. Well, what had happened was the original proposal for that backside CCD address, run the CCD in reverse, dump charge over across the thin silicon, had gone to DARPA. Who cares? Well, I care because the father of liquid crystal display technology, an LCD pioneer, George Halmar, was head of DARPA at that time. He left in 72. He became director of DARPA, 75 to 77, and was undoubtedly, since he was an advocate of LCDs, had seen to it that our approach to spatial light modulation would be rejected. But now he comes to TI exactly when I'm showing off this 16 by 16 demo. It was pretty pathetic, and I give a review to him, and he somehow had the idea that I was trying to do a display on a chip. I had a good friend of mine there go to this review that I gave, who worked with me, Ed Nelson, who developed the printer application, and without Ed Nelson, we wouldn't have an early application, so we wouldn't have digital cinema, for example. I said to Ed afterwards, so what George Halmar said, thinking that I'm doing a display on a chip, he says, many good men have been crushed by that effort. Now, if you have the chief technology officer of a corporation tell you, and you're nothing, how would you feel? Would you feel motivated? Yes, I was. I said, Ed, who was that guy? Because I'm Mr. Magoo. I don't know who people are. I walk around. I'm walking towards the Grand Canyon. I'm about ready to go over. Some guy coming down the little path that's right parallel. I'm reading a newspaper. He bumps me. I go this way. He goes that way. Boom. What happened? I've seen people just disappear from TI. What happened? I don't know. He said, well, that's George Halmar. You don't know, father of liquid crystal display technology, early pioneer. I said, I don't know who that guy really is, but he is going to tell me what I can do. And I went and I wrote down that phrase right there, dated it, GH, initial, and I said, he is going to apologize. I told Ed Nelson, he is going to apologize for that someday. And he did, the year that he left. Ooh, which is the year of irrational exuberance at TI. How interesting. Okay. Anyway, okay, so now we've got the transistors on the right side of the silicon, and we're moving forward. There were two approaches to doing this technology at the time, and both of them involved wet etching and consuming single crystal silicon or polysilicon. I won't go into that, but the point is, you can't put NMOS transistors under a micromirror. And so the invention really that had to be done was how do you manufacture micromirrors with CMOS addressing underneath in a conventional wafer fab. I spent a lot of time doing that. A lot of learning went into that, okay? And so as I developed that, we went on with this printer program, and now we're doing what you saw before with the cantilever mirrors, okay? And we actually demonstrated some print samples, which were fairly poor. And so now in 1987, we're failing. Very poor analog performance. We have a manufacturable process. We have patents that I had filed on. We don't have a technology, though, that overcomes uniformity and brightness issues. And so that's the pivotal decision. Again, every one of these things was a no-brainer from my perspective because I was being funded okay, this time by the chief technology officer. But to stay and accept that money and to fail doesn't make any sense in my career, so I took a chance. The upside is we have the world. The downside is the mirrors stick the very first time they go down, and we suspected they would. But we'll fix that later, and we did. So I went through a series of foundational patents. The last one, number 5, surface passivation. I had to go out. Are there any chemists here? Oh, I'm really glad. I'm really glad. I really don't like chemists. I have one chemist that reminds me every time he sees me, Larry, I made you what you are today. And I have to say, yes, you did, Marvin Cowens. Because he developed the original micromirrors on nitrocellulose. Bismuth antimony metallization on nitrocellulose. Wow, and placed them on NMOS chips for me. Nitrocellulose is gun cotton. When the device is shorted out, they would explode. These are pops, okay? So having done that and failing numerable times, I finally came up with a process. And by the way, the first chemicals I ordered 4 different ones. The first one that came in was the wrong one from my perspective. Turns out that's the one we use today. So that's an example, serendipity, luck, and timing. This is sort of a confluence of events here. Here we have a printer chip, only 840 mirrors. Somebody had the nerve to put together 2 chips. I was opposed to it. And in a package, single package, they put one linear array up here, one up here. They put together some crude optics. They got people into a dark adapted room, and they would say, we're going to demonstrate high definition television. And we take the cardboard off the projection lens after they got their eyes dark adapted, and they look and they see flashing colors. And so this is the first line up here of a high definition. This is line 1024. This is a monolithic semiconductor process. And so it's relatively easy, if you've got $800 million, to put together a high definition display chip. So we had demo of the first product, and this is the confluence of events. We had a demonstration of a product. It turns out Rank Brimar was created by Rank Industries in 1987, the year of the invention, to go out and charter to find a projection technology for auditoriums, ultimately for the cinema. Okay? Rank Corporation, they operate casinos in Europe and a lot of other entertainment things, so this made perfect sense. Rank Brimar. In 1989, they happened to hear about the digital micromirror device. They were so interested that they wanted to invest $5 million of their own money in developing the optics and things that would assist us. Okay? Can you imagine the year of the invention in '89, just before the irrationality? Also, a DARPA high-definition television contract. There was no high-definition standard at the time. There was no hope, really, for high-definition television, certainly not for flat panel at the time. And so projection seemed to be the way to go. I had several patents that augmented this, that had already issued, and the new lubrication technology was demonstrated. And then they had a board of directors meeting. And this was in the summer of 1991. And one of the members said, now, I'm not saying that this is like the integrated circuit invention. On the other hand, I'm not saying that it's not. With that sort of thinking, you can understand what came next. What came next was truly remarkable, and yet there was a huge, huge problem, a disconnect. You see down there at the bottom, we've demonstrated this so-called B2 pixel, which is named after the stealth bomber. Why is that? Because do we have any optical engineers out there? Well, electrical engineers can easily understand the concept of a scattering cross-section. So there's an optical scattering cross-section that's minimized because of the shape of the mirrors. We cut off sharp edges. We don't have squares. Okay? Had horrible contrast ratio. And yet, at the very top level of our organization, determined that we were going to go into full production with that device because we really didn't have time to start all over again. Well, I'd already demonstrated this so-called hidden hinge structure, which you see on the right, in Central Research Lab before I left there. And so what it took was an action to upper level management, second in command of TI at the time, basically trying to get this turned around, which happened in 3 weeks after it was turned on again. There is a disconnect right there. You either take a stand, and it's a no-brainer, right? It's a no-brainer. If you know you're going to fail, you got to burn those bridges one way or another. Okay, so one more thing. It's very curious. And this is the final one, and we'll discuss. So we enter the market a year after our competitor that has LCDs, Epson. We enter the market with a chip that has less resolution, less brightness, less contrast. Okay? We took market share. How can you take market share? We had a seamless image, wall-to-wall mirrors. Epson had transmissive polysilicon LCD, little holes, little apertures. They fixed that problem later. So they looked like little dots on a screen. We were wall-to-wall. A year later, I'm at Tavern on the Green in New York City, receiving an award from Popular Science. I believe it was discovered, Popular Science, for this new technology that I had to turn on. In other words, otherwise we would have been pixelated and we would have gone out of business immediately. Okay, so I think we talked about the 9. And last night in a fit of desperation, am I going to tell you the answer? Am I going to leave a blank screen up there? Literally. You know how I work now, Nicole. Nicole, really, I don't know how she survived me. I got lines of managers who would be willing to testify at my trial, okay? I once stayed up all night in a very visible keynote, threw out, redid it, and showed up 5 minutes late for my own keynote. Okay. Anyway, this is what I did last night. I don't know. So we're going to fill in those blanks over there. What is it that gets you, we've got all the intangibles, we got all that, you're going to work a lot, but what are some of the things? So I started listing them. Teddy Roosevelt, I'm going to skip this quote. Please read Teddy Roosevelt, okay? It's a wonderful quote. It's not the critics who count. All right. So this is only one of 3. I just started doing a free association, okay? I was once told, very recently, that a genius is really someone with an overactive imagination and a lot of time on his hands, okay? Literally, I did that in a pickup truck for 10 years, 2 hours driving a day. Wall Street Journal article wrote a story about that. Okay, my pickup truck of all things, as if my pickup truck had something to do with it. The complacency of labeling in an organization, particularly consider a whole company that has a singular technology. No one in the world manufactures that technology. Okay? And you start to develop labels for problems, but they're higher order labels. They're not at the fundamental level of discovery of what's causing that. And you try desperately to improve by changing the recipe and looking at what happens at the top levels, okay? So sort of in that upper left-hand corner, way of overcoming that, really, critical thinking skills, listening to your intuition, but always checking first with Mother Nature. In other words, always make sure that the
The data that you're getting, the direct feedback that you're getting, in fact, this is Doppler sort of things that we do where we interrogate the individual pixels, is really what's going on, okay? And always be skeptical of consensus thinking. I once asked at a meeting that we had to develop our skills in teaming. And we had a whole session on consensus, developing consensus. Consensus is good. If you're going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars, you better have consensus, okay? I don't have a problem with consensus. What I have a problem is with thinking that consensus trumps everything else, okay? And I asked the question, well, what if the consensus is wrong? And it was very, very quiet in that meeting. It was like no one has ever asked that question. Okay. Take a look around at some of these others, and maybe we'll put this list out for you. The tyranny of consensus. Perseverance, reflexively rejecting, and I'm guilty of that. So some of these things are really not good to emulate. I'm just throwing them out there. Oh, and this is oh, come on. Well, go back. I'm going to show you that. Okay, come on. There we go. I visited UTD in, I believe that was 2010, and gave a talk. And they have a trademark at UTD, Fearless Engineering. It's actually trademarked. I checked it out. And so I really took the title to change the engineering part because they had a trademark, and I didn't want to violate their trademark. Okay. Okay. I think just browse this list, and I'm going to go on. I'm just going to leave this up there, and maybe we can do question and answers, and yeah, just leave that up there. Yeah. So let's do it. Right. Yeah.
I'll come run around with the mic. We could form a line up here in the middle if you want to ask some questions. Come on up. You guys are awake? We got you moving this morning.
Hey, they're not awake. This glare, I really have an eye problem. I can hardly see.
There we go.
Wow. Well, we should have had those lights turned on the whole time.
I guess I'll get started, but hopefully there's others out there. I had a question. So it's kind of interesting you're talking about which path you take.
Yeah.
Do you think there's some places where it might even taken a different path and done something else which could be equally extraordinary? In other words, are there multiple opportunities out there, and how do you figure out which one it is you're going to be doing or even dedicating your life to as you did?
That's a good question. The best way that I can answer that is I'm a combination of Charlie Brown and Mr. Magoo. Mr. Magoo, you got to read some of the cartoons if you don't know who I'm talking about, but he's this bumble-headed guy. Always lucks out, and I really have been extremely lucky. And my only contribution is I keep walking along, boom. And so it's not planning. You saw that sieve there at the beginning of my career. I think that was, I don't believe preordained, but I kept moving, and I can't explain it. That and just being really, really insistent upon doing the right thing and rejecting things that I think are losers, which I had as a talent when I wasn't playing handball and down in the machine shop making widgets and gadgets. I had a talent for trying to figure out what won't work and rejecting it, burning bridges, and then adamantly charging off like I, didn't have my career at stake. And I don't know why. I think people didn't know how to react to me, basically. Seriously. But you'd always better be right. And I haven't been at times, but not when it didn't count.
Mr. One. Thank you very much for a great presentation. It's a real, very motivational. The intuition, self-intuitions that you have really help you to come up with the new ideas. However, you have written that rejecting the group thinking. When you put together all those intuitions on for the discussion process on the table, it really helps. But you are saying that for trailblazing, you don't, you reject the group thinking. How does it work?
Yes, that's a really good question. And it wasn't a problem when I was in the Central Research Labs, because I had programs that I was directly responsible for and just a few people working on them. I was reporting into a larger organization. And so it was relatively easy to reject. Once the company got really, really focused, it was almost impossible without literally going above the heads of somebody. The only way I knew of doing it, and I'm at UTD right now to finish my work that hasn't been completed at the fundamental level, the only way I knew to do it was to go off on my own, having been blocked from doing what I wanted to do, just go off on my own and develop an understanding and a foundation, and just to continue evolving in my mind ideas, okay, without any direct support from the company. Now, as you know, you work for a large company, and they're going to own the IP. So one of the routes that you have, which horrified me, I'm not fearless, would be to quit TI and go to a startup company. Oh, no, I'm not fearless. I want to be protected, but at the same time, I want my own way. I want, my cake, and I want to eat it too. Okay, that's really, really strange. Okay, but that's really a viable option, and it's a lesson to be learned by any company that wants to do some singular accomplishment that's disruptive. Is you don't want your entrepreneurs to go off to startups, to get lured away. It's easier than ever for that to happen today. It was more difficult back then, but it was possible. And there were innumerable startups when we got into production that tried to do micromirrors, okay? And so had I gone, of course TI would have sued me at that point, but you get the message. Early on, before they wanted to do it and invested huge amounts of money, they could have lost something. RCA lost LCDs, okay? And you know the story about CCDs, and you know the story about ICs. TI never had a lock on that. Intel never had a lock on it. They cross-licensed, and so on. So singular technology, but those are the opportunities you lose. And so you really need to think about, and I'm not directing this at you, but I'm just saying that companies should consider supporting their entrepreneurs who are individual contributors who can hardly manage themselves in some small way, once the project gets super big, in some small way without continual blocking. Okay. Sorry to go off on a harangue, but this is another deal. So I'm at UTD now trying to finish my work. Yes.
Hi. Hello? Okay, hi,
Yes.
my name is Paige Castle, and I'm from the Pittsburgh section of IEEE.
Yes.
So in relation to your statement, it's the process, not the destination. How important do you think having the right team for that process is?
Okay. I'm sorry, but it was late at night when I wrote that down. Let me explain. I take great delight in scrambling things, taking ideas and mixing them up in my mind. I did that in a pickup truck, and I just love the process of invention. Well, I'm so bored with the results. And I discount any achievements and any awards because I measure my self-worth by the process of invention, of thinking and enjoying, creating, as opposed to rewards. Nobody is working towards an Oscar unless you're an actor or something. I mean, it's obvious. So that's really what I meant by the process, yeah. The process of invention, sorry. Yeah.
Did you, when you were working on your technology and it was rejected, did you slowly...
Where's the voice there?
Right back here.
Oh, yeah.
Right back here,
yeah.
yeah. So when you were working on developing your technology and it got rejected, did you compartmentalize the different pieces of it? So like, say you were doing your micromechanical pieces, did you develop that for another project and then move it into what you wanted to eventually? So basically you built your project with a whole bunch of other technologies and then put it all together at the end when you finally got approval for it?
No, I'm Mr. Magoo and Charlie Brown. George Hallmeyer, CTO, Father Liquid Crystals, challenges me. I get funding. A miraculous thing happens. Jerry Junkins takes over in the corporation and wants to really, really push new concepts. And we had a need for printing, a printer, high-speed printer. Not for airline ticket printing, but a full-page printer. And we did some marvelous work in that area. They got a person to be in charge of that. I was funded by the chief technology officer, and we brought these things together, the chip and the printing system, and I'm just doing my thing. I don't manage anybody. I'm literally laying out the photomask. I'm doing the silicon processing. I lived in a wafer fab. I went off and studied plasma chemistry, metal sputter deposition, a whole bunch of things I knew nothing about. But I'm literally an independent, and I'm not coordinating anything. Okay? It's not a career path. But I want you to consider that there must be something intermediate between doing everything through consensus and planning and so on. And entrepreneurs, and normally you think of entrepreneurs as having their own organization, but so that's why I say not even entrepreneur, I say individual contributor, okay? So I'm an extreme individual contributor, I guess is the way I would define myself, with a lot of serendipity, luck, and timing. Yes.
Dr. Hornbeck, thanks for amplifying our fearlessness. My question is, if you think there is any value to fear at all in engineering or leadership. In other words, what are your reflections on fearful engineering?
Oh, okay. Fearful is going to get you to fearless. It depends on what you're fearful of. I am really, okay. I didn't show the life-size thing of me on a wall at Texas Instruments in a quote that I had, but I think the quote's out there. Yes, it is, and on the internet now. Yes, I believe it is. I don't let my fear sort of rule what I'm going to do. I'm fearful of failing, which means I will do anything to succeed, which means rejecting what I think won't work, burning bridges. See, I'm fearful of failing, but I'm fearless in moving and rejecting. So, as opposed to someone who is fearful to try, I am reacting to being fearful of what I know won't work, and therefore I think this will work, and being fearless in proposing that. Okay? Does that explain anything? Yeah. I'm mortal. Boy, am I mortal. I once had a manager tell me, right after I'd invented the DMD and demonstrated it, he thought it was cool. He didn't know what it was going to be good for. He said, but his manager thought it was great, so he had to think it was great. He never supported it. And he said, he gave me a backhanded compliment.
This is a great thing that Hornbeck's done, but you know, it normally takes Larry 3 times longer than anybody else. What? You know, and I started reflecting on that. You have to take criticism to heart. And I thought, you know, when I was in graduate school, even undergraduate, seems like I was in a dormitory for a year and a half, freshman, sophomore. Seems like I took a lot of time. I was up late at night. I went to the study halls, left my room. Roommate wanted to sleep. I worked really, really hard. In fact, I made a D on my first physics exam. And I thought, wow, I'm going to really have to charge ahead. Took an advanced calculus course by accident for math majors. I didn't know. I'm a goo. I got a D, actually a final grade D, the only one I'll ever get. And I said, they can't tell me I can't do math. What's the follow-on? This is true. But Mr. Magoo is always lucky. The follow-on was to use those principles in a practical way. And so by studying really, really hard, I got my grade up to a B, okay? Thinking about all of this, and about 10 years ago, I said, you know, there's got to be some reason why it takes me so long to do things, and including running way over, okay? So I went to UT Southwestern Medical and found myself a psychologist. And I really wanted to be analyzed. What is going on here? All right? No, seriously. Try it sometime. If you can't figure it out, go and have somebody else tell you. So they run you through a bunch of tests. And I realized, man, some of those tests, I can't do at all. What the heck? So I'd already knew what number 1, 2, and 3 were going to be. I missed completely. Completely. I have a learning disability. I have a lot of difficulty understanding things, particularly from a lecture like this. It's not supposed to be a lecture. A conversation. Forget it. If I were doing something, writing up, forget it. I would cut the class. If the instructor was teaching out of the book, I'd use the book. I wouldn't even bother to go. I only can get things if I get my hands on them. So I'd rewrite my notes, I'd think about it, work problems, yada, yada, yada. It takes you a lot longer that way than if you can just get it directly. So with that way of thinking, now think of what you're going to do with 2 hours a day on a pickup truck. Okay? You don't have the hands-on, that's taken care of. And it's a wonderful thing that when your hands are on something and you're sort of on autopilot, it actually frees your mind to actually focus on things. So your inner voice is acting, while your body is sort of distracted by the driving. And I passed my exit many, many times. You know, it was 50 miles. What? I'm in the wrong city. Oh, I see what I did. Okay? And so that explains, and really most of my life has been a real struggle in terms of doing anything on time.
Actually, you're right there.
Okay. That's really good. Look how I planned that. Yeah, okay. Well, that's it then. And maybe I can put some of these other notes out there. Yeah. Thank you.